Welcome back to Upstaged, the official podcast for Ronin Theatre Collaborative. My name is E.C. Darlingbond. I am the Assistant Artistic Director and Marketing Director for Ronin. And with us today, we have John Perovich, our playwright in residence, here to talk about The Haunted Castle, The Rot Beneath, our latest collaboration between ourselves and with the Irish Cultural Center and McClellan Library down here in downtown Phoenix. How's it going, John?
I'm doing well. Eric, how are you?
I'm doing dandy as candy. Really glad that we got this time to meet and talk about the show. Now, I know you are a playwright in residence for the theater company, but you have also written a play for Haunted Castle this year again, and you wrote the connective monologues that all the tour guides will be giving audiences as they are led to each show.
Yes. Yeah, lots of writing. It's been fun.
No carpal tunnels.
No.
Very good. Well, so the play you wrote is Peckish. As much as you can tell us, what inspired this play?
Yeah, I guess it really comes down to the process of how we approach Haunted Castle, as a team, as Ronin. We worked with 6 writers, and we we provided like a list of options for the writers based on some pretty well-known, popular folk tales or horror stories, ghost stories. So there was an extensive list of that, and I want to say that I think Cody put it together. I think I helped him with that, I think. But I was really taken by this story called The Hungry Grass. And it's a story that's particular to Ireland, although I would say it's not exclusive to Ireland, because I've seen it replicated in other European countries at least. But the one the one that we're focusing on is the one from Irish tradition. So I don't want to give too much away.
But we can at least say there's a man and a woman and there's trouble.
There's a man, there's a woman, and there's trouble, and it involves grass. I don't know. The story itself was called The Hungry Grass, like from the folktale, and I was just taken by the title at first because I was like, "What? The grass is hungry? What's that about?" So to learn more about the history of the story, there's a very rich history of this particular story. It was just like I was easily inspired by it, like the idea of it. So I really wanted to adapt it for a more contemporary setting. Yes. And to give it a specific story, because the folktale is sort of like a general foreboding or a general warning. It wasn't at least the information I found wasn't a very particular story of it. It was more like just a general knowledge and history of the hungry grass. So I was like, I want to create something contemporary. I want to create something very specific, and I want it to be character driven. And yes, there's 2 folks in the play. We have B.J. Garrett and Courtney Kenyon. And they're going to be performing this in the cottage at the Irish Cultural Center and McClellan Library, which is an awesome setting. It'll be super intimate, so you'll get to see the thrills up close for this play.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
I love being in the cottage to see shows, but it's having to rehearse in the cottage has always been a challenge.
Yes, it's very tight in there. So I've been in there for rehearsals. They're doing a great job in there, and I know it'll be better when there's all seating set up for the audience. But yeah, there's a lot of furniture in there.
Yeah, great furniture. We're not talking ill about the furniture.
No, the table in there is amazing.
Yeah,
it's big. It's a big table with big chairs.
Comfortably sized.
Yeah, so we'll open it up, and it'll be more comfortable for audiences. And yeah, I'm excited to see it perform.
Oh. And you wrote
BJ and Courtney doing a great job.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're going to be so good.
Yeah.
And you also wrote all of the connective monologues that the tour guides will be giving as they guide the audience to each of the 6 locations. What was that process like?
Yeah, I think it kind of started last year. I had written last year for Haunted Castle, and we had tour guides last year for the show. they were very much there to get you from point A to point B, because the property's big and awesome at the castle, at the Irish Cultural Center. But you need somebody to guide you, to help you know where you're going. And right around the same time, maybe not the same time, but around similar times, I was working on a piece for Theater Works, which was a horror, was a series of haunted stories that took place in historic buildings in downtown Peoria. And that was a big part of that show that I was working on, was not only the story, but the tour guides that were a part of that. So I guess it was in my mind, like, oh, what if Haunted Castle had more specific geared stories, or like a storyteller in between the plays to help you, have a great time, but also get you to, get you to where you're going, but also have like a pretty cool story for you, or a way to set up the story of what you're about to see, or maybe cap off what you just saw. So I developed a script that has connective tissue. So between each play, they'll get you where you're going. They'll tell you a little bit of information, but not too much. We don't want to give anything away. But it's a bit humorous and fun. We'll get you to intermission, where you can grab yourself a drink or use the haunted restrooms. And then they'll take you through the rest of your evening. And I've called them gatekeepers. They're kind of like the keepers of the gates of the story. Like when you get to the castle, there's a gate. So the idea is that someone will meet you by the gate, and then they will take you through. Even though I've written the script, a lot of the performers that we're inviting in to do the gatekeeping are also really great improvers. So my hope is that the script will inspire them, but that they'll be free to, go with the flow, interact with the audience, see where it takes them, and just be inspired and have a good time. But if they need to, they can read exactly what I wrote. If they need to.
It's like it's all there in the manual. You don't have to worry.
Yeah, you don't have to, but I've done that kind of performance before, like facilitation, and you kind of want to connect. You want to connect with the audience and make sure that they're having a great time, and listen to how they're responding to the night, and feel free to go there. But we do have a script this year that'll help further just create a great environment. That's the great tone for the night. We wanted to increase the horror amongst all of the plays, but with that, there's a fine line between horror and camp. The creepy and the very humorous. So that's kind of like that role provides a little bit of the humor, because the plays are definitely providing a lot of the thrills this year. They're scary.
It's nice to have someone there who could potentially hold your hand to be like, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You can leave this room after the horror is done.
Yes. So just excited. I imagine that maybe yourself or me, like maybe we'll get involved in that as well as tour guides. We'll see if it's needed. There's lots of opportunities for folks to step in. So we do have a crew that's going to be performing, but I think you might see some Ronin favorites who are going to pop up also as guides.
Oh, absolutely. For those who may not have been able to attend last year, what was your show then?
My show last year was called The Magic Trick, and it was the last play of the evening. It took place outside of the cottage, and it was about an incredibly vain magician who gets one-upped by a guest that night in the audience, who turns out to be a supernatural sort of devilish figure that comes to claim his soul. So as the evening goes on, he loses his senses, right? But he literally loses his senses. He loses his sight, his smell, his touch. He just falls down. And he kind of gets
aggressive game of got your nose ever.
Yes. he gets pulled into the depths below. And that story was inspired by the Hellfire Club, but loosely inspired by the Hellfire Club.
Really?
And this year we also have a play that's inspired by the Hellfire Club. That'll be a totally different take, a totally different inspiration from the Hellfire Club.
And you're having Cody direct your segment for tonight. You guys have worked together for about 10 years now, haven't you?
Yes, I think so. Well, I've known Cody for at least 10 years. I would say we've been working together for, I guess so. That's true. It's 10 years or a little more than 10 years.
And he's going to be directing your show at Space 55, The Broken Age. Is there anything you would like to tell us about that as we get into his work?
Yeah, The Broken Age is about a young man. I guess he's in his early 20s. His name's Wayne, and Wayne thinks that the world is ending. He's having these visions of this, this sort of deity coming to Earth and arriving on a UFO and coming to end the world. And he's heralded by these wasp-like humanoids from Venus, and it's just batty, right? Like nobody should buy this. Wayne's not having a great day. But the problem is that we're not quite sure if he's lying or not. And he's trying to convince his roommate and his girlfriend that they really have to take this seriously. And that's kind of how the play begins. I wrote it before I even knew who H.P. Lovecraft was, or before I knew what weird fiction was. So actually one of my friends who's performed with Ronin and Space 55, Matt Clark, the first time Matt Clark saw a reading of this, he was like, "Oh, this is totally like an H.P. Lovecraft story." And I was like, "Who's that?" Because at the time, I didn't know who that was. Since then, I've gotten very much, I've enjoyed reading, not all of H.P. Lovecraft, but a great portion of it. His writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like some of his stuff I felt like wasn't very engaging. It just felt like reading instructions, or it didn't quite feel like someone to pick up the mantle from Edgar Allan Poe. And not that that's what he was out to do, but that there was a sort of a lineage there that some of his stuff I don't quite connect with in a way that I'm like, this feels very disorganized and disjointed. But others, especially his novellas, his shorter pieces that are his shorter pieces that are longer, like novellas, those are really, really great. So I've enjoyed reading those, and it'll inform a little bit about the Broken Age and where it's going, but not too much, because one, I don't want to steal anything, and two, it wasn't quite literally inspired by Lovecraft in any kind of way.
It's more just like funny coincidences of how you can start off and intersect with someone who you're not even super aware of.
Yeah, and I think what was important to Lovecraft was insanity, like characters who are faced with such tremendous horror that they go insane. They're so fearful that they really do become insane. And I think that kind of works in fiction, but that's just not very interesting to me dramatized. I'm like, like if someone really goes to a point where they lose their minds, right? I think they only go so far for me as a playwright. I'm like, I don't really know where to go from there. I feel like I kind of put myself in a hole. So there's got to be more to it than that for me.
Oh yeah, I always have very strong feelings against when I see like it was all a dream twist.
Yes, no, I don't like that either.
Because it's like, why did we spend this time here? Why? If I want to hear about somebody's dream, I'll ask them. I don't.
Yeah, so I'm doing a rewrite of that, and I think the play is almost cast, and that'll be announced soon, and we'll be ready that'll go up in January.
And then you have Glen Oaks, which will be Ronin's second show for 2026.
Yeah, I believe Glen Oaks opens in, I want to say May. It's either April or May next year. Yeah, Glen Oaks is my most recent play that was written last year. I had 2 readings of it at Theater Artist Studio and worked with a staff. I worked with a cast there and a director, Richard Powers Hart, on the play. And it was just something that I was inspired to write about. Like where I grew up in New Jersey, there was, sometimes you'd be at like a grocery store, and then you'd like be at a movie theater, and then there's like an old tavern that's been there since the 1700s. Or I'd be down the shore, and then like the town over, there's like a glass house that was glass manufacturing, like at the time of the Revolutionary War. So it was like very common to be in like these Revolutionary War or maybe Civil War era buildings and properties, like when you're living your regular day. And I was like, what I wonder how like history reverberates, or like how maybe pain or trauma of the past reverberates into a very, very specific family in a contemporary setting.
Yeah.
So that was my goal with Glen Oaks. I don't know. I don't quite know if that was at least my, like, sometimes you get like an impetus for a play or like an idea, but then it kind of takes on a life of its own from there. And I think that's what happened with Glen Oaks. So that seed's still there, but it's a family drama. There's lots of the characters have lots of rich moments of storytelling, like directly speaking with the audience throughout the play. Very presentational, and there's sort of like fantastical moments in the piece, and we're really just observing this family trying to move forward and figure out if they're going to heal and stay together, or if the way to heal is to actually move on from each other. So it's about like pain and grief and honesty in the reverberations of sort of the history of this town.
That's I reread it yesterday.
Oh.
We were having the production meeting for Shrines, and I thought I should reread all the plays that we're going to be producing, just so I'm able to jot down ideas. And I thought it was just really beautifully written.
Oh, thank you.
And also, I was deeply upset because when I say I recognize this, and I saw like a very similar thing when I was growing up, of just like, oh, I know people exactly like this, to where they are just. I was going over the phrase haunted, where it's not necessarily just meaning like there's a ghost, there's like an absence that for whatever reason just constantly reverberates. But I found this in like having a close-knit family growing up, to where it's like, I know so much about someone who died 20 years ago, who I never met, but for some reason they still have an impact, and it's strange how that person can just be haunting you when you have no personal relationship other than just seeing the effect of them.
Yeah, wow, that's really beautifully said. And yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. Which I think really also ties back in with Haunted Castle, because a lot of these ghost stories are coming from Ireland's rich history. They are talking actively about some of the traumas that Ireland has experienced, especially in the last 300 years. The masterpiece that I wrote for it is more or less a reinterpretation of what was going on during the Celtic revival period, and was kind of a reimagination of Irish fae and ghost spirits, and a little bit of vampirism. I feel like we get a lot of modern vampirism from Ireland, Bram Stoker being Northern Irish. Also the Abertac, one of the first vampires, also a dwarf.
I did not know that.
It is true. Except they don't drink blood by attacking your neck. You basically have a nosebleed until you die, and it's then drawn into them.
Oh my gosh.
Ideas for Haunted Castle season 3.
Yeah, that sounds like next year. That sounds good.
When we have more of an effects budget that we can.
Yeah. It could just be all like blood. It could just be about bloodletting, or like bloody noses. There's lots of bleeding. There are lots of stories about bleeding, bleeders. Yeah.
And then we'll be rounding out 2026 with your Macbeth's Christmas pageant spectaculathon ever.
Yeah, I feel very blessed next year to have a few different pieces. I call them like logs on the fire. And next year, there'll be a lot of logs on the fire next year. We're gonna wrap out at Stage Left. We're doing a co-pro with them, with Ronin and Stage Left. The Macbeth's Christmas pageant spectaculathon ever. It's like a weird combination of Macbeth and A Christmas Story. And the idea was that I've seen too many Christmas Carol plays and musicals where I just feel like I know the story so well, and I hit that mark like when I was 12. There's just so many.
You're just like, I get it. I'm good.
I get it, and it's certainly a beautiful story. And my favorite's A Muppet's Christmas Carol. That's my favorite.
Mine is also Muppets Christmas Carol, followed by the Patrick Stewart one.
Oh, that's a good one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, wouldn't it be great if we just had something alternative? Like you're always going to be able to go see Bob Cratchit, do stuff. But what if there was something alternative that I could create for audiences that maybe could be not necessarily a new tradition, although that would be cool, but definitely something that would be a disruption. Something that could be, folks want to go to the theater at the holiday time, but they want to see something completely different. So it was several years ago that I was joking with Cody actually that I said someone should write a Christmas play about Macbeth, like Macbeth and Santa Claus. Like there's something there. And Cody was like, well, write it, he like chuckled and he was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You got to write it down. There's so many ideas, but until we write something down, we don't really know. So the Macbeth Christmas Pageant, Spectaculathon, it's really about, we start with the elves in the workshop, the way that we would begin with the witches in Macbeth. And the elves are telling us that they're fed up with the working conditions in Santa's workshop, that he just works them too hard, that things are unsafe, that people are being hurt, and that somebody's got to do something about this, but not us.
Somebody else.
Somebody else.
We work through other people. That's kind of our thing.
That's kind of the way they talk too. And that's when Macbeth comes in. And he in this play, he's somebody who's like down on his luck, pretty sulky dude. I think I described him like a la Ross from Friends, like when we first meet Ross.
That is how you describe one of the stage directions to begin with his best Ross impression.
Yeah, it's like, hi guys, and really they ask him like, there's something needs to be done about Santa Claus and you need to step up. And he shares that information. He doesn't really believe it, right? Like he could never be Santa Claus. He could never take over the workshop. And then when he shares that information with his wife, who he thinks is going to be completely dismissive of this, she's very eager and interested about the idea of maybe getting rid of Santa Claus. Or actually, she has other plans for Santa. But I don't want to give that away.
Yeah. Well, it's funny to me because I think you and we had already met each other a few times. But
we were in Macbeth together.
Yeah, we did Macbeth. You were Duncan, Cody was Macbeth, and I was Malcolm.
They're all in the play.
So the question is, will you play Santa Claus in this production?
Oh my goodness. I don't know. I would really love to get somebody who's a little older, who's maybe a little whiter in the beard, a big beard, like actors that we know in the community. Particularly actors who are I would say that people could think of them and think that they could be Santa, because I think that will help. I think that will help them have a good time at the theater. Because Santa's a bit naughty in this play, and I think that could be good. He's very naughty. He's the naughtiest person in the play for sure. He's a filthy Santa. We had a reading of it up at Valdez Theater Conference in Alaska, and the gentleman who played Santa Claus was someone who annually plays Santa Claus in Anchorage. And, everybody a lot of the people knew him that he did this. And then they came to see the reading. And I'm very thankful that he committed to the role, but I could tell that it was uncomfortable for him.
Oh no.
But it was,
I would hope that it would be kind of cathartic.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And I learned a lot from that reading and got really good feedback. So that's lots of rewrites, lots of time with this play. So I'm excited to see it finally staged. I think everyone, if you know a little bit about Macbeth, you should come. If you just want to hear like a crazy Christmas story, come. Or if you're sick of Christmas Carol, come. Check
or
it out.
sick of A Christmas Story, the musical.
Yeah, or like go see Christmas. Go see Christmas Carol, but then come see this too.
Go see this.
Because this play comments a little bit on A Christmas Carol during the play, so kind of enjoy that. But yeah, I'm really excited about next year. It's a big journey of my writing, so I'm very stoked for next season.
Oh yeah. What for you is the challenge when making a 10-minute play?
Ooh, a 10-minute play. That's a great question. I
know we blur the lines of 10 to 15 minutes, actors have to have their moments. But
Yeah, I'd say for Haunted Castle, everyone did really write 10-minute plays. That they really are at that length. Um, because well, it's for practical reasons. We want to make sure that we can anticipate how the evening's going to run and when people get breaks and things like that. The audience when they get breaks, but I think the most challenge as a writer, I love 10-minute plays. I love to sit down and write 10-minute plays. It usually takes me a sitting or two now to write a 10-minute play, a draft of a 10-minute play. To edit, it takes longer. But I do think the hardest thing about a 10-minute play is, what are you going to choose as the content? Because it needs to be something that is introduced, but needs to be resolved in 10 minutes. That's all you get. So I think a lot of times when I was younger, I would write things that there's no way they could be addressed in 10 minutes. They needed a much more time. The characters needed much more time. So like you have to pick like, what is the situation? What is the conflict? Why is it happening today? Who's involved in it? What do they want? Do they get it or not? Or do they get something else? And it all needs to happen within 10 minutes. It needs to be a full story, beginning, middle, and end that the audience has to experience during that time. How do you do that? So it's a lesson in like choices and what you're going to do, and then in economy and efficiency with the story. Not every play is a 10-minute play. So you just have to be very specific about what you choose. It's usually like the most desperate moment. Like the stakes are super high, I find, in a 10-minute play. It's not the moment of like thinking about doing something. It's the moment that thing's going to be done. It has to be done during that time. Yeah, so those are a little bit of my thoughts on the 10-minute play. But I certainly felt that, working on the Hungry Grass play, the Peckish for Haunted Castle, I felt like it needed to be a very specific situation that could get wrapped up. And then working with all of the writers and their pieces and seeing what they chose. I think I would say everybody offers a great experience. There's different kinds of 10-minute plays. Some of the ones that you'll come and see are really about like the great scare factor of a good scary story. And that might not be about like being efficient with your writing. That's about how are you going to create tension in those 10 minutes. That's another way. I would say particularly for Haunted Castle, that's a great approach. But like more generally, that's how I think about a 10-minute play.
yeah.
So the hardest thing's like choosing the content for sure.
Well, one of the nice things is that this year, I don't think anybody had the same inspiration as anybody else.
No, everybody chose their own, and we wanted to keep an eye on anybody that was double dipping. We wanted to avoid that, but everybody from the get-go, everyone chose something different. They were all inspired by something totally different. Yourself included. You were very inspired by something that we didn't even think about. Where did you get that idea from?
I was going through a list of like I wanted to like go off the beaten path because I always start from a place of like, okay, what are things that scare me?
Okay.
And so things that scare me are like being stuck in one place forever and being aware of it. Another thing that scares me is coming home, being in a place of safety and intimacy, and someone being there and being aware that they are. I call it. I was talking with Ashley earlier about it, and I described it as it is a game of hide and seek you did not agree to participate in.
Yeah, I could feel that in your play.
Yeah. So those are the things that scare me, and I was interested in doing something about vampiricism. I think I tend to write a lot about relationships, especially relationships gone wrong. If you saw Pinky Promises last year.
Yeah.
Which is funny because I wrote that as a last-minute backup play. Because originally I had done something about Stingy Jack, where we get Jack-o'-lantern from. But then it was a cast of 3. 2 of the actors had to drop out due to varying conflicts. So it was then me and Jonathan who was in the show. So it was like, okay, we gotta think of something.
Very cool.
Yeah, but last year was very loosely based off a story about these two twins who made a promise that if one of them died, they would let the other one know how it happened.
Yeah.
And this year, I was more inspired by the Lenan Shi, which is kind of this intersection between vampire and muse.
Mm.
And I was really thinking a lot about, like, I had just joined the theater company. I was spending a lot more time like working on shows behind the scenes. And I guess I was feeling a little bit of guilt of like not being that like open enough. I described it to Cody as like sometimes when you're in a play, it's kind of like going into a submarine where you are going to be in this very intimate space with a bunch of people for a very short period of time, and you're kind of cut off from the rest of the world. And eventually you have to reemerge out. And so, which, yeah, I have a love-hate relationship with. I love the art. My favorite part of doing any play is when my family comes to see it, because it feels vindicating when I've made something good and they like it.
I understand.
I'm just like, I didn't widow you on purpose. I have without a reason. It's good, or at the very least, it's interesting.
Yeah, I feel that. Yeah, it is like going in a submarine. I think about it as like going underwater. I'm going to be underwater for a little while. Yeah, it's interesting. That's a similar metaphor.
Yeah. Well, I also watch a lot of. This is the nerdiest thing ever. I watch a series of playwriting tips that they have on the National Theatre Company for England. They have like a playlist where it's different playwrights giving their
I've
thoughts.
watched them. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's one with David Hare, I think, where he talks about like, I used to just be able to write a play just in a bus and I can knock it out, but now I need absolute silence and concentration while I write. And that's kind of mirrored my own development to where it's like, I just need to focus exclusively on what I'm writing in order to get through it. Because I don't know if you have this as a playwright. Sometimes I work it all out in my head and then I don't write anything because it's like, well, I'm satisfied.
Yeah. No, that's a real thing in creativity. It's if you get to the point where you've thought through it, it does feel like an accomplishment. So you won't necessarily write it. Or you won't necessarily make that choice to take that risk to do a thing that you've already thought through. I forget what it is specifically. I think it's related to motivation. Yeah, I always tell people like right to the point, or like get to the point where you know enough and then start. And then stop right before you know what comes next. So that way when you sit down again, you'll know where to start, but you still don't know where it's going. That being said, everybody's different. Everybody has different approaches and styles. But I've definitely been like what you described. I can get that way for sure. Where I'm like, I already thought about it. I'm not going to write it. I'm not going to do it. Yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's a dance.
Well, any plays that you're working on right now, if you're comfortable sharing what ideas you have knocking around?
Right now, I'm definitely rewriting Broken Age. That's at the top of my list. But right behind that, I have a new play called Receiving. And it is a play about three folks that work together in a receiving department of a bookstore. And it's about the dreams and aspirations they have, particularly at the different points in their lives and the different commitments they have to their family, their loved ones, or to themselves with where they are. So it was inspired by, I worked in a receiving department at Barnes & Noble for a while, and I really loved it. And there was definitely a rhythm and a uniqueness to what goes on in that back room to help prep for how things go out on the floor. It's definitely a process, and there's an intelligence to it, and there was a sort of a beautiful rhythm and routine and ritual to it. So I was like, what if I could take that because I want to honor that and go back there for a little while, but also tell the story of these three people. That part's all fictional. The only thing that's real from my life is how did you open the boxes and get the books ready and changeovers and returns and those sorts of things. Yes, that's what I'm working on. There's going to be a reading of that in April at Theater Artist Studio.
Nice.
Yeah.
I wrote a play once called Until Death. The name has changed a few times. And it was inspired by the time I was working it was my first call center job.
Okay.
And there were several phases as part of it. You kind of leveled up. You would do different things. So first level that everybody does was helping people get prescriptions for acne medication by popping down their insurance details and explaining to people what a PIN number was.
Okay.
Second level was emergency room follow-ups. So not how you were doing. It was more like, was the room clean? Did you feel like they got to you quick enough?
Okay.
They never did. But while you were waiting, were you comfortable for the most part? Third level, which is where I mostly stayed, was doing appointment setting for prosthetics.
Okay.
So someone would have a prosthetic piece, and I would call them and say, hey, we have a new model of prosthesis that is going to be demonstrated in your area at such and such a time. Would you like us to schedule something for you? And there were just these deeply personal stories that got shared with me that, of course, I didn't actually... Well, I wrote about one of them, but I won't tell you which one because...
That's fine. Yeah, I know how it is.
Yeah. Names were changed to protect identity. But
no, things inspire you. Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yeah, but just like you said, just having that routine and what it was like to just do the same thing over and over again. And of course, there's a dissolving marriage and a murder plot, and it's fun, but
yeah, yeah.
You know,
Very cool.
Yeah. I think Hugh Laurie one time said he tried keeping a diary. It was about his attempted writing a diary, which he turned into a book called The Gun Runner. And he said, I was writing in a diary and quickly finding I was boring myself. So I just started making things up that happened in the day.
That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. Well, if there's one thing you want people to come away from feeling, thinking about, or, you know, aside from wanting to go back to Haunted Castle again, you know, because everybody is getting a free cocktail or mocktail that has been pre-made.
And it's themed, apparently.
And it is themed.
I wonder what the theme is, because the theme of the night's the rot beneath. So what kind of concoction will that be?
I can tell you the mocktail one.
Oh, what's the mocktail?
It is based off the puka, because it's a shapeshifter. And so it's a mocktail. It's not quite a cocktail, but it looks like it could be.
That's cool. Very cool. Well, I look forward to seeing. I mean, they're very creative there. I look forward to seeing what they come up with. So one thing that I would want folks to walk away with.
Yeah.
I think it's important for me that everybody has a really great time, that they feel like it was a good ride of stories, that they were just highly entertained and had a great night out. That would be chef's kiss for me, that everybody just had a great experience. Yeah, for sure.
John, I love talking to you. Thank you for coming on to the podcast and talking about like what we have coming up in the season ahead, and of course Haunted Castle. We hope you will join us at Haunted Castle at the Irish Cultural Center in McClellan Library, October 23rd through the 30th, with the 27th off as our dark day. John, thank you for joining me, and
have
a spooky Halloween to everyone.
Happy spooky.